Welcome in to the Blake Street Banner. It's the Rockies Insider on Blake Street Banner. I am your co-host, Patrick Lyons, and joining with me, as he is each and every week, Noah Spirek from beautiful, apparently, Bloomington, Indiana. What's going on, bud?
Yeah, I am fired up because this has been the best day of the semester weather-wise for us here in Bloomington, Indiana. And Rockies got an off day yesterday, so kind of just got to chill out, didn't have to stress about any late inning worries. And the Rockies are going to be back at it today in Kansas City. I'm doing well.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and we're going to get to the idea that, is it the Rockies fan base that have had it worse, or has it been the Royals fan base that has had it worse historically? And that's the right way of phrasing it, not who's had it better, because I don't think either of these franchises have, really had it very good for, long periods of time. But looking at it from that fan base perspective, during that 162 game marathon for the regular season, there's games on every day. So when your team that you're a fan of gets a day off, you also get a day off. And it's usually always during the week, which I don't know if it would be better if magically you could select off days for baseball to be on the weekend versus during the week. If you would prefer that, I think most people would rather try to balance the social life and activities and chores of the weekend. Give me a game. That'll be my distraction. But you'd rather have that Monday off or that Thursday off of like, I think I might go to bed early tonight. You're not doing that on a Friday or Saturday or even a Sunday night just because your team doesn't have a game.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. The Monday off days are pretty nice. Thursday is almost kind of weird because you expect to be Thursday's the build up to the weekend. I think it's a great day of the week. We could do a whole show on days of the week and their ratings, but I like Monday being the off day because a lot of times it's the toughest day of the week. You just got to get your brain back into that office mentality. And for the Rockies, they're trying to lock it in and continue a winning streak that stays at one game right now.
It's funny because I thought about posting it or saying it somewhere. For the Rockies, winning one game is a winning streak right now. I mean, they've yet to win 2 in a row. They've lost every single series, which I think last year was really similar to that. Like these last 2 years have been very much the same, which is why, for me, I was a little surprised that they went a different way with the hitting coach, getting rid of Hensley Mullins, quote unquote, relieving him of his duties, and then bringing in Clint Hurdle simply because they've been running it back for 3 straight years. And I'm kind of getting used to them not doing the thing that they probably should do. What was your take when that news came out? Do you think this is going to be a good change? How long, will there be immediate impact? Is it going to take a little bit longer? What have been your thoughts, Noah?
I was not surprised that they made the move. I was surprised that they basically just stayed in-house, and maybe I shouldn't be surprised. But look, the Rockies needed to change something up and do so in a fashion that would be cohesive to winning more. And I think they did that because the numbers that the Rockies were putting up to start the season just were not acceptable. And I like the move overall because something had to happen. And did we expect the Rockies to go out and pull a guy from a different organization? In all reality, no. And that's how it worked out. But I like it.
The Rockies clubhouse has been pretty stale. I don't think I've necessarily said that publicly, but it's been pretty stale for a couple of years. And bringing in Clint Hurdle as a big motivational speaker, as a booming voice, at least when Buddy's not talking, because it's still Buddy's team and he's still the manager for now. But I think that could possibly get them over the hump somewhat because they've been playing in so many close games. Mm-hmm. And yet, their record is really bad. And even if they won a third of those close games, they would still be, in last place in the NL West, and they would still be amongst the worst clubs in all of baseball. But it does feel like, okay, maybe there's something more there that they can tap into because it feels like they don't know how to win. And not that they're resigned to lose, but they have gotten used to losing, for better or worse. I'm sure none of those people want to do that. No human being wants to lose a game. There are plenty of folks who walk away from their job despite the fact that they're getting paid really well because it doesn't fulfill them. They want to go out and win, but I think they've gotten used to losing, and maybe Clint Hurdle can kind of snap them out of that. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's important to make the distinction between saying the Rockies aren't as far away as their record will show, and the Rockies are better than their record, because I would agree that look at the National Series, the two losses they had. Now, given one of the games, they were down by 10 runs at one point, but both of their losses were one-run losses with the game-tying run at third base. And so it was really nice to see them win a game for the first time in 9 games with the City Connect breakouts. And gosh, those looked good on the field, I must say. But yeah, the Rockies likely have played a couple of games better than their record shows. But I mean, that doesn't mean it's pretty. It's
Negligible a
just
little bit.
a more organized mess.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Getting your poop in a group, as they would say.
Ooh,
Well, let's look into this. Do you have any sense right now, just off the top of your head? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this dive and have this conversation, because going into it before I did my research, I thought, it's going to be close. That was what I thought, that whether you pull for the Rockies or Royals, you've had somewhat of a similar experience. Do you have a sense as to, and you're a little bit younger than me, emphasis on a little bit, quote unquote, but in your lifetime and from what you know of these two franchises before we get into the conversation, do you have a sense as to who maybe has had it worse, Royals fans or Rockies fans?
I think all time the Royals have been better, and I know, but I would have guessed before knowing the stats that their all-time winning percentage was higher. And I think in terms of my lifetime, just considering the 21 years that I've seen and been around for, the Royals have definitely they made it to 2 World Series and won one of them in my lifetime. And so it was the Giants and then the Mets, those series. I lived in New York while the Mets were in that World Series. And so the Royals, in my mind, have been the better franchise, in 21 years and all time.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing to debate, because the Royals have had, a lot of 100 loss seasons before the Rockies, eventually got there first, but they got those World Series championships too, in fact. So we'll get into that. And we've got Royals Rockies going on this week, kind of in the middle of America. Two teams that, look, let's face it, when there is going to be a little bit of restructuring of the divisions, when we do get expansion and say circa, well, the decision might not really get going until 2030, 2031, somewhere around there. We're within the 10-year window. I think it will get reshuffled where Kansas City will be in the same division as the Rockies. The two Texas teams, maybe, we'll see. But I think, there's a lot of different ways you could cut it up, and so much of that depends on where those two expansion teams are. But I could see Royals and Rockies having a nice, healthy relationship with the royal blue and the purple of the Rockies. I mean, I think those two colors on the field together would look really cool.
The colors would work, but I hope that the relationship's not too healthy, because when I think Kansas City and Denver, the two don't mix. Chiefs, Broncos, maybe one day the Rockies Royals can become a rivalry. That kind of rolls off the tongue, Rockies Royals rivalry, or a tongue twister, but that would be fun. And gosh, it could be its own conversation, but if it were 4-team divisions in that, then Rockies, Kansas City, would Houston be the most logical next
Houston
team?
and Texas is what I've seen. Again, a lot of that does depend on what the expansion teams are, but it does seem like they would squeeze in really nicely, and I think that'd be good. And I hadn't even thought of that, because I don't think really with anything other than a baseball brain. But man, you're right. KC versus the Broncos, Royals versus Rockies. That actually could be great. That actually could be, a true rivalry for the Rockies that, again, it's starting from day one. It's getting a late jump, obviously, on Yankees, Red Sox, Cardinals, Cubs, but Diamondbacks doesn't really have much juice. But Kansas City, Denver, those two cities definitely have some beef with one another. And so, yeah, that could be pretty interesting.
I think right now the Rockies don't have a natural rival. The Dodgers are every team in baseball's rival, but the Padres especially don't like the Dodgers. The Giants and Dodgers historically have been linked, and the Diamondbacks, for as good as they are, I would more connect them to the Giants rival right now. But gosh, in that new division that we're hypothetically speaking of, just not escaping the Dodgers' grasp is so nice.
Yeah, you talk about rivals, and if you talk to Rockies fans and you say something like Dodgers, their response is going to be, "Ooh." They're gonna grumble, they're gonna roar, they're gonna growl. You ask a Dodgers fans about the Rockies, they go, "Who? Who are we talking about?" Oh, I thought you meant multiple Rocky Balboas. I thought you were talking about the movies. Like, oh, have you seen all the Rockies? No, we were talking anyway. So
No
that's kind of
kidding.
where we're at. All right, let's take a dive into it. Let's talk about payroll, because this is something that is current right now. Historically speaking, I don't think people realize outside of Colorado that Dick Monfort has spent his money pretty well. Like, he has not been cheap. The Rockies, we know, just haven't spent their money well, but they have spent where they're typically in the teens, sometimes even in the low teens. But right now, for the 2025 season, the opening day payroll for the Royals at $131.6 million is actually higher than the Rockies at $128.9 million, even when you include the collective bargaining tax payroll, which sometimes can include, like, the Rockies paying the Cardinals an extra $5 million for Nolan Arenado. The Royals are 17th, whereas the Rockies are 21st. I was a little bit surprised by that. I know the Rockies didn't do a lot in free agency. I know the Royals have been a lot more aggressive the last 2 years. But even all that being said, I was a little surprised, and I just didn't realize that the Rockies have been cutting a lot of payroll. It's been over $70 million the last 2 years.
That is surprising because I'm trying to think of where that money is allocated to. And for the Royals, the first two that come to mind are Bobby Witt Jr., who signed that deal. Was it last year? It was recent. And Salvador Perez, who I would imagine at this point in his career is being paid very nicely. The Rockies have Chris Bryant as their most highly paid player, but beyond that, I'm not sure how it would break down because it almost feels like KB's contract is that far off by itself.
Yeah, the Rockies have 5 players making $10 million or more, whereas the Royals have only 4. One of those includes former Rocky Carlos Estevez as their closer, believe it or not. There are 2 Rockies making 15 plus mil, 3 Royals making 50 plus mil, and each team has a $20 million player, Salvador Perez and Chris Bryant. But you got those $10 plus million guys is Kyle Freeland, Ryan McMahon, and both Herman Marquez and Antonio Senzatella are above that $10 million mark. So that's where those 5 guys come in at. In 2019, the Rockies were coming off that playoff season, so they still had that roster together. They were 12th in terms of payroll. And since then, it's been the high teens. In fact, the Rockies right now are spending about the same on payroll as they were during the 2017 season 8 years ago, whereas the Royals in 2016 and 2017, those World Series years you were bringing up before, they were 9th and 8th respectively in payroll. Since then, they've been typically around the 20th, but again, the Royals spending a little bit more money than the Rockies, and I think a lot of that has to do with the loss of the TV revenue. We'll talk about attendance in just a moment, but I think that is mostly the TV revenue where the Royals have been able to look at and say, here's the money that we have coming in. Maybe we'll spend a larger percentage of our profits. Whereas the Rockies, I think, are really trying to tread water just a little bit after losing $54 million annually to not having a TV deal.
I'm shocked that you said the Rockies are near where they were spending in 2017 because the trajectory of the ball club is, it couldn't be more different. But I suppose it makes sense. 2017 was the year the Rockies qualified for the postseason. It was also the year that their homegrown pitching really broke out across the board, and it laid the groundwork for what the Rockies thought would be a nice 5-year sustained period of success. They did get another postseason year in their only back-to-back postseason years in franchise history. But it makes sense because it was a lineup that 2017 was a Mark Reynolds over 35 homer year. And that was still when Carlos Gonzalez was on the roster, Nolan Arenado, DJ LeMahieu. There was a lot of very good names on that squad. And right now, for the 2025 Rockies to be spending in a similar ballpark, it's they're still searching for those names that will pop, that we're saying now in another 8 years. It's hard to imagine it's been 8 years since 2017, but right now the Rockies are trying to build their way into having a nice set of guys that we can say, okay, well, the pitching broke out in 2017 and 2025, this group broke out, and that's going to set up a period of success.
Yeah, and of course, with inflation, that dollar value in 2017 is really a lot more than it is now. But it's just interesting to think, again, 8 years goes by, and yet they're spending the same amount, which is really a lot less in the grand scheme of things. When you look at that, highs and lows. You talked about winning percentage. I didn't actually crunch that number to figure out what the overall total is, but I did determine that the Rockies, even if we say, you know what, come on, they're going to lose 100 games this year. Fine. 3 100 loss seasons in 33 years. So they haven't been around quite as long, whereas the Royals got their start in, now I'm drawing a blank. I think it's 1969 was their first year that they became an expansion franchise. But the Royals, in all of that time, going all the way back since 1969, have had 7 100 loss seasons, most of them very recently. So since 1993, if we want to look at that spectrum of time, that period of time from when the Rockies came about, Royals, 3 postseason appearances, Rockies, 5. But the Royals, as you pointed out before, have 2 World Series appearances, 1 more than the Rockies, and 1 World Series ring in that time, also 1 more than the Rockies. So 13 postseason appearances in 56 seasons going into this year. So 23.2% of the time, the Royals in their history have made the postseason, whereas the Rockies 5 in 32 years, going to be 5 in 33 years. Right now it's at 15.6% of the time. So just looking at it from that perspective and forgetting 7 100 loss seasons, most of them since 2000, it does seem to favor that the Royals have been more successful. If you're winning a ring, period. If you've gone to more than 1 World Series than the one that the Rockies have gone to, you've been better, period.
Yeah, and the 100 loss seasons, they were able to do it and benefit from it because there was no anti-tank rule. Whether it was on purpose or not, there was no punishment for losing 100 games over and over and over again. And the Rockies, well on their way there this year, won't be able to pick higher than 10th next year in the draft. And before we get onto a different conversation, I want to answer Wild the Innocent's question. Who was the highest paid Rocky in 2017? It was Carlos Gonzalez at $20 million a year, and he was the only player above $20 million on that team. In fact, the next highest paid was the former Royal Greg Holland at $13 million. So interesting to see how the money breaks down with that. And that was the year that Greg Holland set the Rockies saves record before Wade Davis broke it. Is that correct?
Yes. Where are you seeing that? I'm over on Cott's contracts, but for some reason it shows Greg Holland as having made $6 million in 2017.
Yeah, on adjusted payroll salary on Spotrac. That's what, and it says base salary 6 mil, but adjusted was 13. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what that means really. I think I know what it means.
It automated
contracts.
To that.
Cargo $20 million. Nolan was making 11. He was still in arbitration at that time. Ian Desmond was only making $8 million, but then in 2018 that was going to bump up to 22, then 15 and 15. Gerardo Parra making $8 million in 2017, going to make 2018 and are going to make $10 million in 2018. Charlie Blackmon was at 7.3. Greg Holland 6. Jake McGee 5.9 in his final year of arbitration. DJ LeMahieu was an arbitration guy making 4.5. So they had, to your point of what you said before, Noah, these young players, they don't get paid a lot, and it allows you to go out and add veterans. It allows you to add free agents. And the Rockies are in this spot right now where they need their young players to contribute and to be reliable, especially right now when you are going to be paying Ezequiel Tovar a lot coming up very soon with his deal. Still club friendly, but his contract is going to be rising, and that's a little bit less money that you're going to have in free agency. So you got to get creative. You got to have that balance of young guys. That's one of the reasons why the Orioles were really criticized this offseason, because they made some middle tier moves, but all of these young players, besides only having them for a short amount of time, you also only have them for so long before they go into arbitration and they start making a lot of money. Juan Soto, let's not forget, last year in his final year of arbitration, $30 million. Philip saying in the chat, as a Rockies fan, I am most jealous of the Royals' stability at catcher. If I were a Royals fan, to be most jealous of Coors Field. Kauffman Stadium is old, concrete, and in the middle of nowhere. So I thought about this one. I don't think I wrote it down on our outline. Which would you rather have, Noah? Would you rather have the great stadium, which, come on, Coors Field over Kauffman, that's a no-brainer. Look, and there's going to be people in Kansas City that go, yeah, but. Okay, that's fine. You can be the yeah, but 90% of the average public is going Coors Field over Kauffman, period. Would you rather have the better stadium like Coors Field, or would you take the lesser stadium in Kauffman, but have a team Hall of Fame like the Royals have had for a while, acknowledging your history, all of which took place at that ballpark? What say you?
I think if the Rockies had Kauffman Stadium right now with a team Hall of Fame, I don't think the attendance would be what it is with the Rockies where they have Coors Field now. I mean, Coors Field is a spectacle, and I have traveled by Kauffman Stadium countless times because to get from Indy to Colorado, you drive right by it. And that's one of the cool features. Yeah, it's right off the highway, and you see the big crown scoreboard. It's pretty cool, but the location and everything interior, it's not great. Coors Field is a top ballpark, which, considering how old it is in the National League, like, it's kind of crazy that it still ranks so highly, and how much of it is the sunsets, which inspired the jerseys. Coors Field is beautiful, and the renovations that they've done on it are so fantastic. The Rockies retire jersey numbers. They put them up there. I still think I'd take Coors Field over the Royals Hall of Fame and their middling stadium. That's just where I am, because it's different if Coors Field, in my opinion, it's a top 5 park in all of baseball. Now, if Coors Field was the 12th best park, maybe it's different because you attract a new audience with the Hall of Fame, and it builds up the rapport of the franchise in general. But that's where I am on that.
And you know what? The Rockies can have both. They can have an awesome Coors Field, and they can have a team Hall of Fame. I don't know what they're necessarily waiting for. Now, that's interesting that you would say that, because I think I probably would rather lean towards having a team Hall of Fame at the stadium. I would go to the ballpark even if it was run down. I mean, as a kid, I went to Veteran Stadium a lot, and that place was a dump, but it was my dump. That was where I got to see Major League Baseball. So it didn't really matter to me. And let's take a look at the St. Louis Cardinals. Let's point them out as an example, because attendance was another thing I wanted to talk about. And the Rockies are still getting larger crowds than Kansas City. But when you look at terms of change from last year to this year, Royals made the postseason last year, so people are getting excited about this team. Bobby Witt Jr. is going to make anyone excited. Royals 10th best in terms of change from this point from last year, 2,000 more per game, whereas the Rockies are 21st. They're about 1.4 thousand less per game. But on the western end of Missouri, St. Louis is down a whopping 108,000 in attendance since last year. That is 9,000 less per game that's going out to Busch Stadium 3. That's even worse than Tampa Bay's change, and they're playing in a much smaller minor league stadium. And for what it's worth, the Athletics have better attendance now in their minor league ballpark in Sacramento than they did in Oakland. But I bring that up because you're taking the stadium over the team Hall of Fame, basically, right? That's pretty much what we're talking about. But what do you think the St. Louis Cardinals front office is going to do when they get the numbers from the owner and they say, wow, people aren't showing up to watch this team be middling to bad? Don't you think they're going to make a change and try to put a winner back out on the field? That changes when people continue to show up to your ballpark, because it is a baseball mecca. And maybe you don't really have to answer that question of, should we start to do things differently? Or maybe we should run it back for the 3rd consecutive year. So that would be my rebuttal as to why your opinion might not have the legs.
Yeah, no, it was such a good question, and I really was like barely, on that side. But I know the numbers there with the Cardinals is staggering, and honestly, it's
Yeah,
such a beautiful park. The
it is.
St. Louis, I had one of my greatest fan experiences ever. My family won a giveaway to have these really sweet seats, and they brought us ice cream in the seat, and I was a kid, so I thought that was awesome. But we made a whole trip out of it. We went up the arch, and it's a beautiful ballpark, and around here there's a lot of Cardinals fans, so it's hard to miss what's happening with the Cardinals. And on top of it, Nolan Arenado's there. I like to keep track of what's happening with him. But the Cardinals, man, they're in a weird spot because Ollie Marmol back again, and it feels like the team just keeps getting older. So I can see why the fans and the diehards, maybe cool off, don't buy the season ticket package for a year or two until something directionally changes. And I mean, trying to angle it towards the Rockies, like if that perspective was applied, like I don't know what the attendance numbers would look like in Denver.
With what was applied, because attendance is still fine and the team's bad. So you're saying if
I
people
get,
didn't
like
show up to the games,
if the fans had the same logic as the Cardinals fans did,
there might be a change,
yeah,
which would benefit the team and the
yeah,
players and their win-loss record. So
yes.
you don't have that, unfortunately. And so that's an interesting, riddle to try to unpack a little bit as to, what is more valuable, right? I did have team Hall of Fame, yes, versus no. Royals do have one, Rockies don't. Retired numbers, Royals only have 3. That kind of surprised me just a little bit. They haven't had a ton of Hall of Famers in general. There are like 5 Royals that have made the Hall of Fame, but 3 of them only played 1 year in Kansas City: Harmon Killebrew, Gaylord Perry, and Orlando Cepeda. So they really have 1 player and 1 manager. The Royals have George Brett, who was a lifer for the Royals, and then Whitey Herzog, who did not win his World Series with the Royals. He won it with the Cardinals. Whereas the Rockies, they've got Walker and Helton, and they've got their own manager in Jim Leland. I was trying to think of a decent comparison of like, okay, well, the Royals have these guys, 3 guys that got into the Hall of Fame, and they were with the Royals for 1 year. Every team has those guys, except the Rockies right now. I mean, they got Jim Leland, who had 1 year and then quit on the team. But like Harmon Killebrew and Orlando Cepeda is basically the equivalent of Dale Murphy. When Dale Murphy gets in the Hall of Fame, and he will, maybe another 50 years, who knows? But when Dale Murphy gets in the Hall of Fame, people will go back and go, he was a Rocky in 93? Yes, the Rockies now have 4 Hall of Famers. And then Gaylord Perry, I don't have a perfect match, but Jamie Moyer could be a guy that in maybe more like 75 years from now, he ends up getting into the Hall of Fame. His numbers there are some numbers that aren't great. Other numbers you look and go, damn, that's really friggin' impressive that he was able to pitch that long and have the amount of success that he did during the steroid era. Let's not forget when he pitched. A lot of his career was in the American League back when they were the only league that had a DH. So the numbers were pumped up just a little bit. So, maybe he'll be another one of those guys that will get into the Hall of Fame at some point. Do you think the Rockies need to be retiring more numbers? Right now, it's just the 2, Helton and Walker, whereas the Royals have George Brett, Dick Hauser, and Frank White, 2 guys that are not Hall of Famers.
I think the Rockies need to retire Charlie Blackmon's number. I don't think they necessarily need to retire more. Aaron is so maybe we've changed him, but he is so anti-retiring number 19. He thinks it's got to be greatness that gets a jersey retired instead of just prolonged being great. That's the best way I can summarize it. But Charlie needs to get his number retired. And my question for you is, if the Rockies were to put together a team Hall of Fame, where in the stadium would it go? Because I mean, you can't take out the children's playground behind center field because
yes, you can.
No, that's essential for the rain delays. That's where I went as a kid when there was a rain delay. 2 hours against the Angels, and we didn't get to stay past the 6th inning. It was a very sad night. But where would you put it in Coors Field?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I know there is like an area that's in the old Student Movers building. Like if you ever walk around Coors Field, there is an old building that actually technically predates Coors Field, older than Wrigley Field. This building in down the right field line. I love your furrowed brow right now. So,
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying to think of, where the media walks, so you might not see it, but you know how they've got the guy sliding into home plate and you either see safe or out. That is a building. That is just an old building. It was called the Student Movers Building. And that was around since like 1912 or something. It predates Coors Field. My cousin actually did electrical work on it when they were building Coors Field. It's rumored to be haunted. I know that the Rockies communications department is in that section of Coors Field, but they haven't really experienced anything at all. There we go. Wild the Innocent backing me up. Thank you. And there's a cool spot on the inside because there's an entryway there, like a VIP entryway where all the bricks are like different sizes, and it feels like you could scale it, like you could climb up because it's so jagged. But that is an old building right there. And I think there was maybe in the basement, there was like a storage area. There are probably different nooks and crannies that you could have something. How big does it need to be? I don't know. You could have it out in center field. I know originally, I know you don't like that idea, getting rid of the play place out in center. But, you could, I think originally with McGregor Square, I could have sworn there was part of the press release that said there was going to be a team Hall of Fame in there. And while on one hand you go, it's got to be a part of the stadium. On the other, it would allow year-round access to the team Hall of Fame. So while a little, left of center, while a little unorthodox, I'd sign up for that because you know what? That's better for fans in a lot of different ways. And it could allow you to tell the story of Colorado baseball, not just Colorado Rockies baseball, but the great history of professional and amateur baseball in the state of Colorado. That would be awesome. So you know what? That would be my answer. You know what? You could have it over at McGregor Square, take out a whole floor, take down one of the condos. I think there's space in there already. So that would be fine. Would that feel weird to you to not have it in the ballpark, but across the street?
Well, as you were describing it, when the Rockies built McGregor Square, I immediately pictured how Great American Ballpark is. They have that whole plaza outside of the main entrance, and during opening day every year is really the only time you see the Reds fans pour in like that. But it's a whole parade. I think it makes perfect sense to put it in McGregor Square because where it is in relation to the ballpark would make a lot of sense. And as long as you've got parking there and the Rockies have enough behind the stadium, I think that would work well.
Fun fact, the guy who did a lot of the sculptures out at Great American Ballpark, Tom Tsuchiya, is from Cincinnati. And he also, since I'm not sure what the first year was, maybe it was 14, 15, he also sculpts the plaques for the Baseball Hall of Fame. So Shout out to Tom Tsuchiya. Had him on my podcast a couple of years ago. Good dude. Let's look at awards, right? Great players doing great things. Royals also only one MVP, George Brett in 1980, Larry Walker, 1997, one manager of the year for the Royals, Tony Pena in 2003, two for the Rockies, Don Baylor in 95, their first postseason, and then one for Jim Tracy in 2009. Rockies, of course, have never won the Cy Young Award. Royals have had 4 Cy Young Award winners, including 2 from Brett Saberhagen, who later pitched for the Rockies in 1995. And 4 Rookie of the Years for the Royals, whereas the Rockies just have the one. So it's a 10-4 final score on the big end of season award. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, okay, the edge goes to the Royals.
But which team has a former MVP on their team now?
Well, technically, how literal do you want to be? On the active roster?
Okay.
Yes,
yeah, no.
You're right. Good. No, that's a fair thing to point out. Which team has a MVP on their active roster? That would be the Royals. Bobby Witt Jr. Check back. Just trust me. Hop in your DeLorean, zoom into the future. You'll look back and go, "Oh my God, he was right. He's got the sports almanac." Bobby Witt Jr. is going to win an MVP.
I was trying to get Chris Bryant to score the Rockies a brownie point.
I also wrote I also had something down that I decided not to get into, but controversies, because that is something that the Rockies try to pride themselves on, is not having these big controversies. Like, say what you will about signing a guy to a $182 million contract and he's barely played 162 games in 4 seasons. That's not a controversy. That's just a bad move. That's bad PR. It's a bad look, quote unquote, bad optics, but it's not a controversy that you're like, oh man, we got to live that down, and it's a totally shameful thing. That kind of stuff just happens. But I decided not to go any further than that in terms of controversies by these franchises.
I feel like the biggest controversy that the Rockies are involved in is, did Holiday touch home plate?
There you go.
And that one got answered for itself. So
so here's something that it would have been, oh gosh, 2002. When did Sean Bouchard make his major league debut? You're like, where are you going with this? All right, it was 2002. So he gets called up, and he's from San Diego. And I don't know if he was at game 162 or not. Probably not. I doubt he made the trip from San Diego, but he was a Padres fan. And sure enough, we get done. You know how like you get that typical break in the scrum where there's that 1.5-second pause of no question. You go, all right, thanks, Sean. And everybody disperses. I stuck around and waited and said, so Sean, got to know, did Matt Holliday touch home plate? And, you know, and he's a funny guy. Sean Bouchard is a funny guy. I won't tell you exactly what he said, but he made sure to not put his foot in his mouth. I'll just say that much.
He's a smart businessman. Yeah. Every time I watch that, and I really wish that I got to experience that run, like as an active fan. Every time I watch that clip, I think about, shoot, if that was today, like the Rockies are playing another extra inning. That it could have changed everything. And given the Rockies didn't win the World Series in 2007, that really is the pennant that they hold on to super close, because without that, what have the Rockies done?
That wouldn't have been the third out of the inning. There were no outs. So even if he was out at home plate, it would have been
2 outs runner on second.
The bases have still been empty. No, Todd Helton was still on base. So he would have, I don't think he moved up to second. So you'd had 1 out, runner on third. And I don't know if anyone's had this conversation. I'm sure there are plenty of fans out there that have had that conversation. And then you would have had Brad Hawpe coming up, who had walked 3 times in the game already, was 0 for 3, and the pitcher spot right after that. So you probably walk Brad Hawpe, runners on first and second with 1 out.
Well, it'd be two outs, right? Because
you're right. Because it's a double play on that.
Yeah.
Yes. So you have 2 outs, first and second. I don't know who else was left on the bench, because it was the pitcher spot. It was Ramon Ortiz in that spot, who ultimately ended up getting the win. I'm not sure if there was anybody left on the bench. That is an interesting exercise to go through.
Well, and that game is the perfect reason why the pitcher win stat shouldn't be a thing. You know what I mean? You give up 3 in the top half, and
that's why nobody pays attention. It's like batting average. It's really not that important in the grand scheme of things. We're just kind of used to that. Like if you would, I mean, you could have dangled $2 billion in front of me and said, Patrick, who won game 163? Wouldn't come up with Ramon Ortiz. There are fans out there that would have, but I'm like, oh shoot. I'm gonna say Jamie Carroll. I don't know how he did it, but he pulled off the sac fly. I'm gonna also give him the pitching win. Why not?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gotten that one.
And with batting average and pitcher wins, like the batting title is given to the person with the highest average, and I'm glad that there's nothing for the pitcher with the most wins, because it really
not really. Flawed. It used to be you would more likely than not fare pretty favorably in Cy Young Award voting.
Yeah.
And then pretty much once wins above replacement became universally accepted, it was like, oh, Felix Hernandez only won 12 games. That's fine. Well, we'll give it to him anyway. He was clearly great. He just pitches for a bad team. Stadium, we know it's not even close. Coors Field versus Kauffman. Even in spring training, Salt River Fields, one of the best spring training facilities, is fantastic. Surprise Stadium, no personality whatsoever. It's just like this cookie cutter spring training ballpark. It's pretty beat. Well, so that is another one that would go the Rockies' way.
When you think of
the way of the Rockies fan, that is.
Yeah, yeah. And when you think of Kauffman Stadium, what do you think of first thing?
Well, I do think about the big scoreboard in center field. I think
Yeah,
that it probably must be a miserable place to be in the summertime because it's a gigantic parking lot. And so
yeah.
the sun is just beating down on that asphalt. And I think, there's nothing around Kauffman. It's like you're just going for the game. It's not an experience. I was talking with my cousin Jordan. If you've listened to me podcast for years, cousin Jordan is canon. And I was like, we were talking about, I'm thinking about maybe Rockies Mets series out in Citi Field at the end of May. Might make that trip. We'll see. A lot of ducks need to get in a row. And I was just saying, you know what, Citi Field is a headache to get to. There is a 7 train, so there's public transportation to get there, but it's rough to get to. Dodger Stadium's got to be number 1 in terms of getting in and out. There's no public transportation, so that is the worst experience going to a game. Coors Field is pretty easy to get in and out of, other than the fact that you might have to take that little tram, that little bus that you got to get on, and it's going to drive you to the extra mile and a half to get to the stadium if you parked in the lot. But you got Union Station right there.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Kauffman, no, it's just a gigantic parking lot with Arrowhead Stadium in there. So it's not great, but I've been there. I've seen a game. I've driven by that stretch of road many a times. I'm like, oh, it's coming up. Oh, let's look inside. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
I would be happy to call that place my home if I'd call any place my home, to cover baseball full time like this. So I'm cool with it. It's fine. 5th oldest stadium in all baseball, Noah. 5th oldest. Only
Wow.
4 stadiums are younger.
Jeez. Well, and is the Rockies not the second oldest in the National League?
3rd oldest.
Third. Yeah, third.
Yeah.
That was
You said it earlier, I think. Wrigley and Dodger.
Yeah.
But then Kauffman, Angel Stadium is 7 years younger. Dodger Stadium, 11 years younger, from 1962. Wrigley Field in 1914, which would put my student movers building at 1912. I feel like that date is pretty accurate. And then, of course, the oldest, Fenway Park, back in 1912.
Yeah. Well, I was asking you the question because the fountains is what I think of first, but the Rockies they do that better too. They put fountains in center field that are better. So,
well, they were better. I'll say they were better. The Rockies have not been firing up the fountains very much. I don't know if it's a water conservation thing or what, but they're more like sprinklers. Like it's like the water that shoots up from your slip and slide. It doesn't really do much. You can see that on a lot of videos that I'll post over on social media at Patrick D. Lyons of like, oh, Brenton Doyle, home run to left field. And then you'll see just a little sparkler of water going up in those fountains.
well, if it's eco-friendly, that would make sense because the Rockies won an award today. The 2024 Sustainability Award winner, they won the Eco Slugger Innovation Award for innovative efforts in implementing sustainable practices. So does it start with the water retention that they're running? Maybe.
Yeah, it could be. Rockies saving the planet 100 loss season at a time.
Oh, gosh.
And the humidity of Kansas City is bad, pointed out in the chat. Like, you know the famous Ichiro quote when he was sitting down talking with Bob Costas, right? Do you know about that?
I think, would it pop into my mind if I heard like a second of it?
Maybe. But, Ichiro speaks, very good English. And when he first came up, he said, Bob Costas asked him, said, your English is actually really good. Do you have a favorite phrase? Because usually you learn a new language, one of the first things you learn are all the curses. And he said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, he's like, the summer in Kansas City is hotter than 2 rats banging in a burlap sack or something like that. And then when he got inducted, or when the announcement came in January that he had been elected to the Hall of Fame, Costas did the thing. It was like, Bob Costas, you're on TikTok too much. You know what to ask. And so he did. He followed up and he goes, so Ichiro, you had a great quote. What are your thoughts on that? I forget exactly what he asked. And Ichiro was like, actually, I'm a little embarrassed by that. I wish I kind of hadn't said that. So that I don't think that's taken any of the mustard off that, moment exactly. But Ichiro's like a little bit more bashful about it.
That's great. I don't know if I had seen that before. That's so funny though.
Yeah, that's a great one. So let's solve it right now. Is there a negligible difference between being a fan in Kansas City versus being Colorado? And we're not going to bring up humidity versus the humidor because the weather is great. I mean, there's few places that have better weather than Denver. But from everything that we've jumped into, and tell me if there's anything that we would have missed, do you think it's been slightly better or more than just slightly better being a Royals fan over the years or a Rockies fan?
I think it has been more than slightly better being a Royals fan than a Rockies fan. As much as I like to talk about how great Coors Field is, the product on the field has to that has to be first. And I recall watching Royals World Series games multiple times, and I cannot recall watching a Rockies World Series game because I was 3 years old when that happened. So no, I think it's all Royals right now.
Yeah, you had a very bad memory back then when you were 3. It's awful. But yeah, I would say it's also the Royals, but only slightly. Only it's to me, it's almost it's a break even. But maybe I should be putting more emphasis on the 2 World Series wins. Over time, right? I think for the Royals were just so bad for so long, from like 2000 through 2015 when they 2014 2015 when they finally started to get good. But it's been rough being a Royals fan, and now seeing what the Rockies have gone through. That's the thing is, Rockies fans, they always have a smile on their face. They're always good natured in that way, and they will still show up to Coors Field despite a bad product. So it feels like it's fine. Like it's great. Like we got a great ballpark to go to. It's beautiful. We got purple. Like that's a unique thing. Like those are some little things that, do have value as a fan. But yeah, you know what? Maybe it is Royals, but I'll say it's pretty darn close.
I think about the year, I believe the All-Star game was in Cincinnati. It was one of those 2 years, actually, when the Royals had 7 of the American League All-Star starters.
I think that was in Kansas City. That was the Kansas City.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Couldn't have been more than a year or 2 away from
Name them.
Cincinnati.
How many Royals can you name from that year that we don't even have the exact year of?
Yeah. Hosmer comes.
Okay.
Kane.
Ooh, all right. Yeah, I forgot about him.
I'm
gonna throw
Moustakas.
Moustakas, definitely.
Rockies legend.
Billy Butler in there. Billy Butler. Gotta include him.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about in left field?
Left field. If I got Lorenzo Kane and I can't get left field.
He was a career Royal. Was he first overall pick? Yeah, he was. He was the first overall pick. They might end up retiring his number. He's not a Hall of Famer, though.
I'm not even drawing a name right now.
He's not related to Tom Gordon, but it's probably a mistake some people have made. Gordon?
Yeah, I don't know his first name.
Alex Gordon.
Yes.
Yeah. Probably a pitcher in there. Greinke was maybe Greinke that year.
Yeah.
He would have gotten voted in, right? Because pitchers don't, but.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if he was with them at that point. Felt like as soon as Greinke was out of the American League, he swept through all of the National League West. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, opt out and then just sign with a new team.
Yeah.
I still can't believe he's just done. Like, he hasn't announced his retirement. Just nobody signed him. Maybe Rockies?
The Rockies. I don't even think he'd sign with the Rockies.
Tristan McKenzie, maybe?
Yeah. I want that to happen.
But that would be fun. And I talked about this on the Rockies Insider the other day about how many more players we could possibly see debut. We've seen 4 Major League debuts in the first 21 games of the season, putting the Rockies on pace for 31 debuts. Not going to happen. And I ran down the list of all the guys, and you tell me. So I've got 14 guys that could still make their debut this year. And there's still there are guys that maybe aren't even with the Rockies right now that could still make their Major League debut. Like, I don't know how that would work, but my gut instinct says that could happen. But there's 6 down in Albuquerque, I think, that have a good shot. Yankees Fernandez, already on the 40-man. Ryan Ritter, Sterling Thompson, Carson Palmquist, Juan Mejia, also on the 40-man, and Ryan Rollison. Ritter, Thompson, and Palmquist all need to be added to the 40-man roster this offseason. And you know what? If they don't get added this offseason, then that tells you a lot about how the Rockies feel about them. But odds are they feel good about those guys. So like they did last year at Drew Romo, let him make his debut, get his feet wet just a little bit before adding him. Any of those names to you seem out of the ordinary, or would you sign up for all 6 making their debut this year?
I would sign up for all 6. I think that is a pretty accurate grouping, and I think all of the names you said on MLB.com, it has their ETA being this year too. So they certainly are thinking along the right track. When is Gabe Hughes going to get a break and come to the big leagues? Feels like the Rockies have been waiting on him, and I know health has held him back, but that would be the only other one that I'd consider.
Yeah, I have him on my list because he's another guy that needs to be added to the 40-man roster. So despite being in Double-A Hartford right now, I would sign up for him making his debut. There are 4 other guys that are down in Albuquerque that I think would be a stretch, but maybe, just maybe, they could end up making their major league debut this year. Warming Bernabel, who is not even 23 years old yet. He's almost going to be 23. He feels like he's been around for forever. Allow him to make his debut. Again, we don't know what's going to get shaken up with this Rockies roster, if they're going to need a guy in an emergency, and might be 4 games. Who knows? But could he make his debut this year? Possible. Julio Carreras, who's been around for a while, was a former 40-man guy. Ya boy, and I don't even know if he's officially ya boy, but he seems like he's about everybody's ya boy. So I'm going to say ya boy, Jeffrey Yan. I think he's got a shot possibly. And then Antoine Kelly, who was on the 40-man, was it 2 years ago or was it last year? Ever so briefly, picked him up from the Rangers. I think those guys could also end up, getting an opportunity down in AAA. Duke and Darnell's out there as well, maybe.
It's got to. The guy that led Aaron to start Blake Street Banter. That's why he's such a legend on the page. But if Jeffrey Yan makes it, then the Rockies might have their 3rd sellout of the year. That's what I'm saying.
but you call him up and then don't pitch him and go, tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're going to pitch him. And then you get a sellout again. Is that going to be the strategy?
I think so. And then on the 3rd one, the fans might riot. So I don't know.
And also down in Hartford, Kyle Karros, I could see still making his debut. And then 2 other guys that need to be added to the 40-man for the first time, Benny Montgomery and Blake Adams. Blake Adams has been sneaky good. He's kind of been underrated. He's a guy that, if you're going out to like a top 40, he's going to be in that list and could end up rising really quickly. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if we'll get all 14 to debut, but I think it's pretty safe to say they're going to reach double digits again this year for major league debuts.
Blake Adams has to get like a presidential nickname because that is just such a name that belongs in office.
Blake Quincy Adams? Do we want to go with that? Does that work?
Yeah, that's got to be it.
The man's so good that even before he debuted, they named a street after him. Yeah. All right, last little bit of today, the miscellaneous fodder. Nick Kurtz. You familiar with the name Nick Kurtz? He was drafted
careful.
4th overall pick out of Wake Forest. Big thumper, big bat. But, you don't want – I'm not going to say you never want to draft a first baseman, but you've got nowhere else to go once you've played first base. You end up at first base. You don't start there. It's one of the reasons why shortstops are very prominent in the draft, because if you can play shortstop, you can play anywhere else on the field. You might even be able to be a catcher. Tony Walters, case in point, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Like, these are guys that can go out and do such things. But Nick Kurtz was the 4th overall pick last year in the draft, less than a year ago. He's now been promoted by the A's up to the majors. So as soon as today, Noah, Nick Kurtz could have more home runs in the majors than Charlie Condon, pick number 3 by the Rockies. He could have more home runs than Condon has in his entire minor league career, which is 1. Is that
Condon?
Say that's baseball?
That's baseball. Condon's been hurt, so
sure.
And I am going to have the largest defense case ready for Condon because it feels like he's the guy that has to trigger this Rockies run to relevance. Maybe that's the series we should call it. He's got to be good for the Rockies to make the postseason. Same thing kind of applies to Dolander, but with the pitching depth, you can afford for him to take a bit of a longer learning curve, I believe. Condon, need him to recover as fast as possible to be healthy. So, I mean, I'm not too – that would be a crazy story if Kurtz homers twice today and does that. I saw a headline today that NBC Sports, which carries athletics games, had to warn the play-by-play broadcasters, of course, Jenny Cavanaugh being one of them, about being especially careful with Kurt's name, like purposefully pausing because they don't want to have to deal with any legal trouble that could result from saying his name too fast.
Oh God, I don't think I ever put that together. Yeah, I guess so. I guess we'll just be glad his name isn't Richard. To give him the nickname of the Rockies owner, and then now that also sounds bad too. So,
that one's better.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. That one you might be able to say and not be accused of anything. Well, look, I'm not dunking on anyone because it's just an unfortunate situation for Condon, but it does seem to be the Rockies' luck, right? Like the guy who goes after the Rockies pick already in the majors, and it wasn't an Angel. If it was the Angels, that would be one thing. But no, we're actually talking about the A's, who are, they're sneaky good. They certainly handed it to the Rockies here not that long ago at Coors Field. Anything else left on the docket for Noah, before we say goodbye?
I don't think so. We covered. Looking ahead at the Royals series, probable starters: Feltner against Chris Bubik. I think I said that. Bubich, one of the ones. Bubich.
Nikola Bubich.
Yeah, that's another all-name first team. Then game 2, Herman Marquez and Michael Lorenzen in game 3. This one will be fun on a Thursday. Chase Dolander and Cole Reagans. That's going to be a must-watch.
Yes. Yeah, that's first pitch is, I think, 7:30 a.m. Denver time. No, it's pretty early. I think it's like maybe noon.
It is.
Maybe 7? I don't know, but it's
noon Mountain Time.
Yeah, it's an early one. But that's a good one to keep you distracted on a Thursday. Get through that day. Boom, it's Friday. Rockies are back home against the Reds. 30th anniversary coming up on Saturday with Dante Bichette throwing out the first pitch. Ellie De La Cruz. How many stolen bases you got Ellie De La Cruz down for this weekend? Will he steal 5? Okay. Is he going to steal
crazy. That'd be something. He could. It's not even out of the question. He's done it before, I think.
I'm gonna have to watch his batting practice to see if he puts one on the concourse. He doesn't have a ton of power, does he? I mean, obviously he's got long levers, but
when he hit one that got picked up by the nearby
that's right,
air station, that's pretty major. That not a lot of guys can say they've done.
All right, so we'll have to, if you get an alert on your phone that DIA has been shut down and all flights have been delayed, you go, De La Cruz probably went deep off one of the Rockies relievers. Oh well, that's baseball for you. And that's at Patrick D. Lyons on all social media, Patrick D. Lyons MLB, and go check out the Rockies Insider as well. How about Noah? Where can folks find all your awesome content?
At Noah Spirek and over at Blake Street Banter.
Yeah, and go over to the Blake Street Banter YouTube channel so you can actually see Noah pointing to the correct spot now. It took a while.
Yes.
He did go through a rigorous 12-hour training course. But now, after that course, he can confidently point. And, good for you, dude. Good for you.
5th time's the charm.
Yes. All right, well, thank you for everyone. Wild the Innocent, Philip, Mikey, didn't get to your comment earlier. Everybody else over in the chat, appreciate you dropping by, giving us tons of momentum. But, as I like to say, momentum, it can only be as good as knowing where your name is on StreamYard. We'll talk to you later. That didn't make any sense. I edit that out. Play the outro. Oh, I'm the producer. Sorry. Hold on.